Hello, good evening. Hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you very much, everyone, for turning up tonight. I believe this is one of the most popular online Waterstones events that has happened this year, and there's a very good reason for it. I'm Robin Ince, by the way. I'm going to be hosting this evening, and it is an evening about one of my favourite television shows, not merely of the 21st century, probably my favourite television show of the 21st century and one of my favourite television shows of all time. It is such a delight to talk to two people who, from the first time that I actually saw their work, I almost thought they'd been inside my head. All of these reference points, all of these things, all of the beautiful way that the ghostly, the uncanny and the strange were used, just has been delighting me now, I suppose, for nearly 25 years. And their series Inside Number 9 is what we're going to be talking about tonight. In particular, the first three series of Inside Number 9, because this book has come out. This is one version of the book. There is another which we may well see later on. These are the first three series, all the scripts from those series, the original shooting scripts, so there are some changes in them. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I'm now going to welcome them to this evening's event. And I know there is one thing we'll definitely be talking about, because I would say not only do I love all the episodes of this show, but some of them have been genuinely transformative, I would say, to me as well. Please welcome to whichever particular functional room in your house you're sitting in at the moment, Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
This is I love these. I love these things as well, because it's so perfect to do an Inside Number 9 event, because there is such a level the moment you do something like a Zoom webinar, the possibility of horror lurking. And may I say so, Reece, in your background there are so many things which are close to an uncanny valley of strangeness.
Yes, there are. Yeah, they're all going to behave tonight. I've told them all to be quiet, so we shouldn't have any problems. But we
So
could
as
do it.
a reenactment of Ealing's Dead of Night again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Steve Pemberton, thank you very much as well for joining us. I'm going to just start straight away by asking you about, now I love books like the script books, and I remember as a kid the excitement, in particular I think the excitement when the comic strip presents Methuen brought out the first 5 episodes in script form, and there was also an extra episode with Eddie Monsoon which had never been shown. These were such a delightful thing to have, and I presume from your history as well, from what I know about, what you both talked about growing up and your love of so many things theatrical and horrific and strange, you must have also been a fan of these script books.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always collected them. I think we both have, especially in comedy. Victoria Wood, I remember finding in charity shops. Up to You, Porky, Barmy. And they're the kind of things that you reread a lot more than you would reread a novel. There's a few novels I might read twice or 3 times, but with script books, I just go back to them all the time. And it's not from a sort of studious point of view or kind of I want to learn something. You just revel in it. You just can revel in it. It reminds you. You can imagine, the TV versions, but it's your own version. You can hold it in your hands and really love that language. And yeah, I go back to them all the time.
Did you ever, in childhood, do that thing of reenacting something? Because I know the guy who I think directed the last Star Wars film, where he put Adrian Edmondson into it, and apparently he was such a fan of Bottom, but had never seen the show because it wasn't in America. Got hold of some scripts and made a whole series with his friends, which is still hidden away somewhere. He actually filmed what he imagined Rick and Aid's Bottom was.
Wow. Well, I mean, they did give you the opportunity of being able to think, I could just try and act these things out now. I think what is good about them is that you get to see, you can sort of see more clearly the structure of it and how to construct sketches, especially in the Victoria Wood books, because you really could see how the brilliance of the writing and the paybacks and the callbacks and things. And then the Alan Bennett script books came out with Talking Heads. They were very good to look at as well, just those big long monologues for people, because as actors at drama school, even though it wasn't a drama school, we would have to look at monologues for ourselves to do various projects and things, and it was always interesting to look at plays and script and in those plays look for a passage that you could think that could be, I could try and learn that and do that as a monologue. So they were informative as far as learning to write or thinking you could do it. And that's ongoing, you know, you still, these ones now, it's just lovely to have our own version of these scripts now, just to preserve the fact that we wrote them. Otherwise, it would just be scrap paper in a drawer. That's what it is for me. So it's nice to actually have them on a shelf and think, we did that.
How did it... Sorry.
Yeah, it took 8 years, but we did it.
Well, that's what I wondered, Steve, in terms of returning to, in particular, for instance, the first series, going back and looking at these scripts for the purposes of the book and seeing perhaps, I presume you would now be far more familiar with the finished product than thinking, oh, this was the script that we sat in that room and that we really sweated over. What were the revelations in terms of getting a sense of that process that led to, for instance, say, the first episode, Sardines?
Yeah, it was really interesting. We debated, you know, obviously we've got several drafts worth, and I think probably for the latter 3 series, I've got very organised, nice files on my computer. The first 3, we had to search high and low to find them, because if you don't keep them on paper, and this is going back to 2014, was it, when we were, no, 20.
I think it's 13 or maybe even 12 when we started.
Anyway, the point being, we didn't just have them to hand, did we, to send in? So we had to go into the BBC. So we wanted to find the versions that we had on the shooting scripts, which is what you have on day 1 to start filming with. So it's the best version you've got to that point, obviously. Then stuff gets cut out, maybe in the edit, or you change stuff on the day. But we've preserved all that. So there are bits in there which you'll think, well, that they never said that, or they changed that. And I think that is one of the joys of script books. But yeah, to take Sardines as an example, the very first draft we did, which I do have, had nothing of the sort of dark abuse storyline in it. It was just about 12 people playing sardines and getting in that wardrobe. And it ended with them all in there going, oh, well, the game's finished now because no one else is looking for us. Yeah, it's a crap ending. And we were advised by our fantastic executive producer, John Plowman, and he sort of said, well, you know, couldn't something terrible happen to them? And we groaned. It's like, is that what you think? Is that all we do? We have to do the dark, twisted ending. But of course,
it's weird because he's always saying to us that they're too dark and horrible, and can there be some jokes? And then he's the one that suggested, can they all be set on fire at the end? So it was, that was a surprise to us, because we thought we'd written one that was quite just funny, just character driven, and I mean, but ultimately that's the problem with just doing funny. I mean, and not to take away from that, because that's hard. But we always feel like if it's surface comedic and nothing else going on that gives it a bit more of a kick in the storytelling, we never feel like we've quite finished the job. So that's why we always end up with something else underneath that's going on that hopefully gives you an extra element that elevates it into something that you can watch again, and it's more intriguing as a bit of telly.
See, that's something that I find, and you know, Sardines would be a good example, and many of that, which is, and you especially see it in the book, is seeing the delicacy with which you manage to leap between jokes and tragedy and jokes again. Like, you know, you have, as we find out, and Timothy West is so utterly, I mean, the whole cast is superb, but Timothy West, what he brings in that very, you know, the small amount of time he's on screen, but the fact that there are still funny moments involving Stinky John, at the same time as we now know, as I think I said to you recently, you know, at times this is Feston in a wardrobe. This is, you know, Narnia Feston almost. It's kind of like, you know, and then you, every now and again, you remind yourself something terrible has happened here, but there is a laugh as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the knife edge that we're constantly sort of walking along, and I suppose the interesting thing about the first series is we didn't know what Inside Number 9 was going to be. We didn't even know when it was commissioned that they were all going to be inside Number 9s. I mean, we had no concept other than let's do self-contained stories. And the reason we went for that was because we did an episode of Psychoville, which is in the first series, all set in one room. And I think we really enjoyed going back to basics in a way of just saying, okay, strip away the kind of big plots and story arcs and, making something last for 12 episodes when really you could have it wrapped up in an hour. This is my bugbear at the moment, watching shows on especially big American shows. You think, God, we could do that in an episode of Inside Number 9. Like I'm watching The Undoing with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant, and it's trash, but it's one story of Inside Number 9 over 10 hours. Why am I still watching it? But anyway, so it was the condensing of a story, a plot, characters, dialogue, and it really excited us to put the focus on the writing in that way. But we didn't know what it was we were writing. We didn't know what we were trying to achieve, what would bind all these stories together. And I think that has become clearer the more series we've done, but still we can do anything with it. And it's a really joyful sort of experience for us. And it's a bit like a playroom for a writer. It's a bit like a dressing up room for an actor. This, for us as writers, is like, use whatever you want. Use period, use genres, use deep tragedy, use pathos, use horror, use high comedy, use low comedy, use whatever you can and mix it all together. And that's Inside Number 9.
It's interesting, Reece, sorry, I wouldn't. We'd normally conversate. It's always a bit weird doing these things.
Of course, yeah.
But I was as the series have gone on, you've gone into more and more, as you said there, Steve, more and more genres, and there are, I think there was an expectation perhaps in the early days that it was all going to be unsettling, ghostly, uncanny stories with an edge of horror. But you've explored further and further. And did you find initially when you were doing that, whether there might have been perhaps from quite intense League fans and Psychoville fans, this kind of, oh, hang on a minute, no, we want everything to be horror. Has there been a sense at any point you think of resistance, of you feeling you have to overcome that?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there is a point where we're writing scripts after scripts where we start to think of it as 6 in a series, and therefore think about the mix of stories, and that informs the last 2, because we think, well, we haven't got a funny one yet. Let's try and actually do a funny one, or shall we let's do the horror one, if we haven't felt like we've got an out and out full on scary one. Horror can be very gothic, like the Harrowing, or it can be a bit more more sort of mundane monster, like To Have and to Hold, that story that was very real and yet probably the most horrific that we've done. So, but as far as us as writers, I think we enjoy, I mean, it just is the way it falls, as far as generally there's always some dark element or a marrying of something funny initially and then it turning it and has a dark undertone. But we've always, we've increasingly, as we're writing them, thinking, let's just try and do one that's, just because it's great to try and think, what haven't we done now, and how can we feel different?
Steve,
gentleman in the red jumper, in the blue jumper.
Well, I was going to say, because this has just reminded me, when we finished Psychoville, and we weren't sure whether it had finished or not. At the time, we hear John Plowman, who was our executive producer from The League of Gentlemen onwards, he said, what the BBC have decided they want is big and funny.
Oh, yeah.
So you remember at that sort of turn of the century, there was dark comedies were 10 a penny, and there were some brilliant ones. You've got Julia Davis stuff, you've got Chris Morris stuff, and all the time we were doing League of Gentlemen, so dark comedy was in vogue. And I think the BBC and all the other networks were struggling with big, mass audience comedies. And so they said, what we're looking for is big and funny. So please give us something big and funny. And we sat down and wrote Nana's Party. And that was the first, which is in series 2. That was the first script we wrote. And we thought, okay, well, this is, of course it's dealing with really tough emotional things, but actually there's a lot of jokes in it. It's a very high concept, farcical comedy. And that was our version of Big and Funny. And then they wanted another script. So we thought, well, we'll do something in contrast to that. So we wrote Tom and Jerry, which was a very dark, psychological, twisty-turny sort of thing. So straight away, we had these two very contrasting scripts, but it's, you know, it was our intention possibly not to do dark comedy, because we didn't think that's what they wanted anymore, but we failed.
That's the head from in Psychoville, when the giant Mr. Punch comes and gets Mr. Jelly. That's the head.
Yes.
Trivia there for you.
I love it. There are so many heads. If we do this for long enough, we can be introduced to some of the 27, 28 heads that are just in that room alone that you've collected.
Lots of heads.
Have you ever found that you started writing, you thought, this story we've written is the funny story, and that either in the process or indeed the reception of it, you've gone, oh, we thought this was the funny story, but this turns out this is a story that has really, you know, people have found more melancholy or bleak, or a lot more, because I think emotionally, I mean, obviously there will be no way of avoiding 12 Days of Christine, I think, because as Reece knows, it had the for me personally, the emotional punch of that episode was enormous. I have never been as affected. I genuinely don't think I've ever been as affected by anything I've seen on television as much as I was at 12 Days of Christine. It was, and it has taken me a long. I watched it again for this, and I'm always very wary, because there is a point in that where it. And I remember that night on social media, just the effect of it was enormous. And that sense of how much you are going to be going inside so many people's minds and inside their skin, how much are you able to get a sense of that beforehand, or will you often be taken by surprise when you then see the reaction?
Well, it's of course now with Inside Number 9, you can see the reaction if you do look on social media. In previous projects, we never had that opportunity really. But especially because I think that the first series, we were very, very proud of it. We thought we'd done a great mix of episodes. And when we sat down to write series 2, I have to say there was a great weight around our shoulders, wasn't there? Because it was like, shit, we've got to match that at least. And the 12 Days of Christine was the last episode we wrote for. We'd written the 5 others, and so in a way there was no pressure on us to make it the funny one or the scary one. We had a good mix, and it was just an idea that once we talked about it, we wrote very, very quickly, and it was one of those that you know. I hate it when writers say, it just poured out and I wasn't even in control, because I think that's bullshit. You have to really work hard at writing. But this kind of did. And I think because we weren't trying to think of jokes necessarily, we weren't stopping and thinking of funny things. We knew the ending as well, so we weren't sitting and thinking, oh God, where are we going with this? We wrote it in a week, swear to God, and barely touched it. And in terms of the reaction, that episode, I was just sitting in front of my computer like I am now, reading these comments. It wasn't just, oh, I really enjoyed it, it was really good. People, you know, it touched them really deeply, and that was.
I think we knew it was. We knew it was good because when we were filming, obviously I'm hardly in it. It's the best one. I'm not in it. So I don't know what that tells you, but I was watching the Christmas scene, the end scene, being filmed at the monitor, and it was the cameramen. Some of them were crying, and and people off the set were moved watching this play out, and having seen it rehearsed, and you know, you're watching it, you're making it, you're not invested in and sort of into it, but these people were like, "You've got something here. This is." Everyone was choked up, and so I think we knew it was moving, and might have an effect on people. But genuinely surprised just at how deeply it seemed to affect people. I mean, there are people that go, "I got it," and you know, and don't particularly like it and don't care for it. But mostly, a lot of people were very deeply touched by it, and surprised. I think maybe it was because it was smuggled in what is meant to be a comedy on BBC Two, and you get this very emotional journey with this woman who you suddenly really care about in 25 minutes. So maybe it's all the more impactful because you're slightly not geared up for it.
But I think it freed us up as writers when we saw how well it had gone down. So when we come to do the next subsequent series, we're thinking, so we don't have to always crowbar humor in. There was humor in that. It was everyday humor. We did a similar thing, I suppose, with in the later series, Love's Great Adventure, where you're not forcing our writers' jokes. It's just the jokes that a family have. But it just kind of freed us up to think, right, well, we don't have to just do the darkness and the comedy and butting up against each other. We can explore emotional territory as well. And so we never know when we sit down what we're going to do, is the truth of it.
My wife genuinely thought that I'd was having a nervous breakdown when I showed it. I'd watched it twice already to just see, can I watch it a second time without almost being sick emotionally? And then the third time, I thought we'll be fine this time. And she just went, well, I don't know. I just thought you were going mad. I thought, well, thanks for the empathy.
But the interesting thing about it, and I don't know what people who've bought the script book of the Inside Number 9, the scripts, I don't know what people make of it reading it, but we were worried because on the page, it doesn't pack as much of a punch. We didn't think, because it doesn't have the joke lines, the funny lines. But so we were a bit nervous of it, and we sat with it. We thought, well, it's good. It's the 6th one. We've already got 5 good ones. So let's just send it in and see what people make of it. But we were unsure, weren't we? Because it was so, I remember there's not a laugh in it.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, is it right? Is it right? Should we send it in?
I mean, the funny thing about writing is, you can have, I remember thinking about this with the League of Gentlemen scripts. They never really read, the Pauline sketches never read funny on the page. They were quite deadly in a way, because it seemed like it was just, and they're not, some of the time we don't really write jokes, but it's all in Steve's performance as Pauline. And suddenly you go, oh yeah, weirdly, now it's funny, not weirdly, but there's something is brought to it by us, by particularly being us, and not just writing scripts that are surefire and could work in the hands of anybody. And that's a particular thing as well, that when you're writing something thinking, I know this is funny because Steve's doing it. It might not read funny, as a construct on the page, like da-da-dum, set up, payoff, gag. And oftentimes we're not doing that. There's a pass where we sort of think about that and go back in. But a lot of the times it's story-led, and that in life doesn't feel like people are cracking funny lines all the time. So that it's a hidden, hopefully, way of wryly looking at the world. And Christine is an example, a proper example of that, because it's all these events in this woman's life whizzing by, and there is humour with her friend that she has the Halloween party with, and it's just that, and like in Love's Great Adventure, where it was just the funny, sad moments in life. And that's where I think if it's good if you can do that, because then it doesn't feel like it's just gag, and you're not writing something that could sort of be the same in anyone's hands. And I think that's a nice thing, that you can think this can only be done in this way.
It's what interesting. Just think about 12 Days of Christine and also Quiet Night In, that both of them second episodes of a series, and both of them, to me, to some extent, feel like slightly transformative episodes. So when I watched Sardines, I remember sitting down watching that, and it is exactly what I would hope and in some ways expect from what this is brilliant, this is really what I want. And then Quiet Night In comes, and as a huge Laurel and Hardy fan, I see that as a kind of, wonderfully it has the jokes in that are 21st century slapstick Laurel and Hardy with the darkness here. And that, I remember the next day talking to a lot of people, oh my God, did you see that? It felt very unexpected. And in the same way, I think 12 Days of Christine, again, Couchette, you go, oh, yes, this is great, and you're trying to work out what the twist is. But then 12 Days of Christine was, again, just so unexpected. And that, how much are you involved in thinking, right, this is the episode, this needs to go out now, this needs to go, this is the order to make sure that people go, oh, good, I had a laugh last week, now I'm ready for bleakness, or whatever it might be, like that.
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely a big part of it. You never order them to begin with. You film them all and get them all ready, and then you just go on your instinct. So we like to begin with something which is perhaps a big cast, which is quite easy to get into and easy to understand and not off-putting. And we had a big debate about Quiet Night In because it was so out there as a concept with no dialogue. There was a worry that it would be too off-putting for people. So were we going to put it last, or were we going to put it in second spot? There was a real debate about it. But I think, given the fact that these are just half an hour each week, you can take a risk, and it's worth taking a risk and doing something that's high concept. And people have really responded to that. So we like to now change the mood each week wherever possible. And it won't always be the same in every series, but we have ended up having a bit of a pattern. The second one has to solidify the audience. So if anyone's watched the first one and wants to give it a second go, that second episode is almost more important in terms of growing your audience. And ending on a really good episode is also important. So we've generally ended on a spooky, unsettling, scary one. So, but yeah, we never decide in advance. We sit there with the cards, and we shuffle them into different orders, and it just falls into, what we all agree.
Because Elizabeth Gadge feels like the perfect follow-up to 12 Days of Christine. And in particular, not only do you have David Warner again, a second, I mean, that must be a delight as well. To David Warner, his comedy timing and his playing of, I can't remember in League, whether he was called an apothecary or whatever he was in the League of Gentlemen movie there, where he is the magician. There is and the smartness of that timing where he is in Little Happening. Is it Little Happening?
Yeah. Little Happens.
Oh, Little Happens. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was great to get him because he obviously is really funny. Everyone knows this from Man with Two Brains and Time Bandits, of course. But he was brilliant. He jumped at the chance to come back and do this with us. And he really got it. It's just great when you know someone that can just get the comedy of it, when you can hear it in there. Wasn't written for him, but it was great. But funnily enough, he said of when it went out, he said, "Why did you put our one on after that 12 days? I didn't stand a chance." Because he was like, "Oh, it's shit now." Because of that, of the great reaction to 12 Days of Christine. It was like,
no one said it was shit.
Loads of people say it every day, Steve.
They're fools, every one of them. I've severed many friendships over that third episode, and I'm happy I have.
I know.
It was such a great 360 or 180, turnabout from Christine to do something so silly with just stupid jokes, goody two shoes, and all of this. It was just the perfect one to put next. And again, so you're 3 episodes in, you think, I don't know what this is. What is this series? I have no idea where I am. And next week, I've got no idea where I'm going to go. And even once the episode started, you've got no idea. And that's what we love. I mean, the pair of us love things which are just surprising. I know we use the word twist a lot, but it's just about being surprising. How much television do we all watch that is just a variation on something you've already seen, or you can watch it with the phone in your hand because you don't really need to pay attention. You know what it is. You know where it's going. And what we love about anything that we've done is that you kind of have to do watch it because it could take a really unexpected turn at any point. And that's what drives Inside Number 9. I think that's pretty clear.
How much have you had an experience of from script in terms of then when it is in the hands of other actors? Because I was thinking with Elizabeth Gadge, I think Sinead Matthews is just utterly superb in that. I can do no justice to her reading of the line or when he's at shit, but every single time I've heard that line now 20 times, when he's at shit, and it still makes me laugh with utter delight. That are there ever, when again going back to the scripts, you sometimes think, do you know what, we had no sense that this was actually going to be the actor, and this did change that character, the humour within it, or the pathos within it. Have there been any kind of particular examples in those first 3 series where there's been a level of kind of transformative casting?
Yeah, you never get you never. A lot of the actors that we get in it, you can't audition them because they're big names, and you've just got to make. They're all good, and you hope that they'll bring something to it, and at the very least, do it as you imagined, or deliver the part at least. But then you're always hoping that people will elevate it and make it funnier than it is or more moving than it might be. So, and that's true of not just the actors. It's in the design and in the look of it, the makeups, and you know, we're big for the collaboration of letting go of it and allowing everyone to sort of knock it up a few notches, because we don't presume at the point of the script that it's the best it'll ever be. And it's good to think that there's room for improvement every step of the way. But I don't think we've ever really had anyone we've whispered to ourselves, oh God, this now is not as good as this isn't as good as it's written. I think everyone has always delivered it and it's gone over the line. Genuinely, I think that.
I think you go with the version of the character that the actor you've cast gives you. And sometimes it isn't what you thought it was going to be, but sometimes it's better. It's never worse, I think.
Oh yeah, always, yeah.
Often it's just spot on and you go, that's exactly what I thought. But I think that's a really good example, that the Gadge episode, because it's such a big cast. And you've got wonderful character actors like Trevor Cooper, we have Paul Kay, of course the wonderful Ruth Sheen, and David Warner, you know, cherry on the top, and Jim Howick. So Jim worked really well with Sinead. And even though it was freezing cold and everyone was actually pretty miserable, temperature-wise, everyone was sort of having a good laugh with it and, you know, trying to make the most of their bit. And that, I think, those big ensemble casts like Sardines is another good example. It's a bit like, I remember the film Shortcuts, you know, the Robert Altman, and I watched a documentary about that. Matthew Modine was saying, I was sent the rushes of all these other stories, and I thought, I can't be the shit one in this. Everyone is so good. So I've got to come in and up my game. And that's what I love about the ensemble pieces that we do. We're just rehearsing one at the moment. I can't tell you about it, but it's got that sense of I've got to match everybody else, and you get a great ensemble performance from that.
In terms of your own personal casting, at what point do you two know this, I think, is my character, and this? I mean, do you sometimes find yourself from the outset going, you know, right, I think this is the person that I'm going to be playing, or do you find yourself slowly beginning to fit into those roles?
Yeah, I mean, it happens both ways. Sometimes we're quite sure, and it's quite unwavering which way around the parts will be, and other times we never really settle on it until much later, and we can be really quite close to the wire and still have not decided which way it could go. So I think we don't always write them thinking you could only do this and I can only do this, but oftentimes it works out that we think, oh well, I won't play, actually now I won't play that one because it will be too much like that one, because God knows, you know, we're having done so many now, there's only so many wigs and things you can put on to try to ring the changes. But we've had instances where it's been quite late in the day, haven't we? And we haven't even decided.
Well, I think of the understudy in series 1, where you've got the actor and the understudy, but both good parts.
Yeah.
And I think at one point I was going to be the understudy, and I just thought, it's not believable. I look way older than Reece, and we need the understudy to look a bit greener. So that's how I talked my way into that. But even, I think, A Quiet Night In, we weren't exactly... sorry, I keep looking because I've got all the pictures.
Yeah.
I keep looking over here because I have to do that to remind me of the episodes. But yeah, I mean, look at La Couchette, we didn't know.
Yeah, that's right.
I really quite fancied that part. And then I was going to be Mark Benton's part, and
yes.
we were going to cast a real German. And I think we came close, but the real German did not want to defecate into a shoebox. We thought Germans are defecating into shoeboxes. That is their humour.
That was the clincher, wasn't it?
Any German is going to go, oh, it's such a great script, I get to shit in the shoebox. And they didn't want to do it. So I ended up having to do it. But other
for real as well.
It's quite clear, you know, it's going to be like, there's no way that Reece wasn't going to play Mr. Warren in Elizabeth's Gadget. There was no way I wasn't going to play Squires in The Riddle of the Sphinx. You know, some of them we kind of know, others it's a toss-up. And then sometimes, like as we said earlier, we'll take really minor roles and small roles. That gives us a break as well.
Have there been, looking back? And I can't ask that because then it looked. But I was just thinking if there were at times we've gone, oh, do you know what? I wish we had taken that. That bigger role would have been. I'd like to have played that, and I wasn't as tired as I thought during that amount of. Have there been any roles that you've thought, oh, I really wish I could have done that as well?
I think that's a bit greedy of us because let's face it, we are in all the episodes. I mean, it's interesting about series 1. I was very nervous, and I think Reece was a little bit, about it looking like a vanity project, because very often with these different character every week, it's look what I can do this week, and I'm the main character this week, and I'm also the main character this week, and look at all the different voices I can do. And I think then it's a star vehicle, and it's not really focusing on the stories. So we said, look, let's take a week off each and not be in every episode. But we found that people were a bit disappointed that we weren't in them. And that was quite eye-opening, wasn't it?
Yeah, it became apparent that it is actually a thing that we appear in them. And it's nice when we're together. I mean, we wrote the Bernie Clifton one, which is in series 4. We can't really talk about it because it's not in this canon of books, but partly to address the fact that we'd never really done a two-hander. But it is a thing that we are in them, and I don't think it's such a bad thing, because I do think we always serve the story first, and we're not trying to just do showing off. We don't need to do that anymore. We've done hundreds of them now.
Also, you keep Britain's wig industry going.
Yes,
I think, I remember doing an event with you after you'd had a very long day of trying on wigs, and you looked utterly exhausted from all of the glue. I want to talk a little bit about, and then, by the way, I think people know anyway, because there's loads of questions that have come through, and I've got questions that were sent in advance, and I will go to audience questions, so I'm sorry. I've only got to question 2 of the list that I made of my own, though, so I'm in charge. But the influences are very... people, for instance, will often say Tales of the Unexpected, and I've watched some of them recently because they're repeated, right? And you're nothing like Tales of the Unexpected. Oh, my God, I'd never known how crap most of them are. The best there is Timothy West turning into a bee. That's the pinnacle. And the rest of them are normally, it turned out his wife was a lesbian all along. I mean, they're really... but what were, when you were growing up, those childhood... Because I suppose another one might be Brian Clemens' Thriller series, which I think 50% of episodes were trying to drive a fragile but rich woman mad to gain her money. Again, this is...
Yeah.
What were the ones that made an impression on you, and that you perhaps think of also still have, a little bit of that kind of vim to them?
The Lamb to the Slaughter is a good one. I mean, all the ones that are Roald Dahl ones are quite good. Some of them, they're all quite ropily filmed, but that's just the way they were. But some of them in the later series, because it was like 9 series, were there, or 7 series? I can't remember, but there was a lot of ones that weren't Roald Dahl. And in the end, it ends up being, the most bold one that me and Steve always laugh at is the Ron Moody one, where he's the wine taster. And the man bets his house or his wife or something on he can taste and tell which vintage this wine is. And the twist is he goes in the kitchen and looks at the bottle. It's on the fridge, and he goes in and does a look at it. And it's literally that, and it ends. It's like, no way. But there were some, I think it just suffers now because audiences are so sophisticated. We couldn't do the twist in the way they did, because it would be, people just know the tropes, and we play with that now, and we try and be one step ahead. But it was informative, and it was really enjoyable. I'm not taking away the fact that I loved it, because it felt like you were getting these little dark stories, and that was what we loved. So it was like Hammer House of Horror. We were drawn to it anyway, because there were these. I loved it that there were tarot cards in the opening titles, and it was just spooky and occultish, and it was just something. This is my thing.
Yeah, it isn't
stories. Yeah.
Have you seen the one where it ends up they can't work out how someone got away with a murder, and the whole thing is the police can't work out how the guy got away with it, and then right at the end they go, "Oh, it turns out he ate the gun. He used to work in a circus." And you're given no clues about him working in a circus. There's no hints, no little bit. It's just going, "Oh, I found a circus poster. He's a guy who can eat guns." And that one's a particular. Yeah, were there any other? Because I was trying to think of what was, we're of a similar generation, and they're pretty much the same. And there were certain TV shows as well that I recently started showing Inside Number 9 to my 12-year-old son, and some of them are unsettling and have those images. And I think, when I was growing up, Children of the Stones, The Changes, and in fact the opening credits of Brian Clemens' Thriller, really unsettling. Just a fish-eyed lens or just a sound effect. Are the things that you look back now and you think, oh, that was the most unsettling effect of television from your childhood?
Well, there was the classic armchair thriller, which we based our opening titles, The Whole Shadow, the shadows, and the episode with the nun in the rocking chair. Do you remember that one? So we watched that recently on the League of Gentlemen tour bus, didn't we? We watched the entirety of it.
We watched all of it, yeah.
But we also have that image burned in our minds of the nun with a very clearly, obviously black piece of material in front of her face. You gasp now at how sophisticated it all is, but it was really terrifying, wasn't it?
It was. Well, that one bit finally, after about 15 hours of it, because it was so slow. That was the thing. I mean, it's mean to now point this out, but it was dreadfully slow. It was a snail's pace, the exposition. And there was about 4 episodes before you got upstairs in that attic, and then there she was. And the same with the one with the Martin Jarvis and the dog shits, which we all have a memory of, and it's not even him. The one with the poodle that was kidnapped, and then he gets the box of chocolates, and it's dog muck. And we always thought it was Martin Jarvis. It's not even him. It's a different actor. We think someone's gone back in the archive and changed it, switched it out. Very expensive CGI.
The one I remember is Hammer House of Horror, and it was, I don't know, I didn't understand why. I'd seen quite a few horror films, but it was the fact that evil prevailed at the end of every episode in that series. Every single episode, evil prevails, and it was this, and it left you very unsettled because it was unfinished business. And so films like The Wicker Man and Don't Look Now, which equally have these very downbeat endings, I think they just stay with you. There's something about it. There's something about an ending which sends a ripple back across the rest of the story that makes you think about it long after it's finished. A happy ending, catharsis, they're married, phew, we got rid of the evil. And then once that's finished, someone will say to you, what did you watch last night? I can't really remember. But something which challenges you and really unsettles you, you think about it for days and in fact years. And I think in 20, 30 years time, when people are talking about Inside Number 9, apart from the fact they'll say it was so slow, it went on for 30 minutes. Apart from that, I'd like to think that some of these endings that we've done will have affected people and packed that same punch. I mean, the Devil of Christmas is another one, talking about Brian Clemens' Thriller. We watched 2 or 3 episodes of it for that episode because, like you say, they're all the same plot. So that's where we got the plot of The Devil of Christmas, which is, the pills driving the wife mad. And then, of course, she turns it around on him and it's his, oh, my heart, the pills. So this is almost word for word scripts from Brian Clemens' Thriller. And but the ending we put on top of that with the, read all about it in the script book. But with the fact that it's a snuff movie, it just left people gobsmacked, I think. And
the worst one of the Hammer House of Horrors is the Julia Foster and the 13th reunion, when it's the people that have survived the plane crash, and every year they gather together to eat someone. It's a brilliant idea. And then at the very last minute, she thinks she's uncovered it all, and she goes and tells Warren Clark, and he says, I was on that plane too. Chop. And it's so horrible because you've been, so rooting for her to get away, and then within a second she's gone. That's the end of it. The next thing, she's in the Michael Winner adverts.
I've forgotten that. What a twist! Isn't that amazing? That House of Hammer said, right, we're not going to do that. The main twist is 25 years later in a car insurance advert. That's when we actually get the full resolution. That will be the moment. How often have you started, or how far have you got into stories and actually gone, you know what, we can't find the right ending. We can't find, or are there, when this has been an enormous success as it is already, the script book, and then there'll be the second one, will there then be the cash-in one with all the half-finished scripts that didn't quite make it onto Inside Number 9?
We have written some that are nearly complete, and then for one reason or another they've been abandoned. I think oftentimes through being too ambitious and monetary difficulties, but we've sometimes toiled for a week on something and got far in and so far in, and then thought it's just not catching fire, we can't see, and you sort of just decide it's not working, and you leave it. And there's a couple like that we in lockdown we started and have left them because they just didn't quite, just couldn't think of where they could go next. One of the things is the continual advancement of the story and how it moves on, how it develops, and that's hard in the with the constraints, and sometimes you just can't see a way that the next thing could happen that justifies staying with it as an intriguing story. I think
it's never wasted, because you might pick that up again in 2, 3, 5, sometimes even 10 years time. And I always say to people, don't throw stuff away, because there are scripts that or not even scripts, but ideas, and I can't find the notes, because now I think I would be able to get something from it. But nothing's wasted. And even if we abandon an idea, generally we would talk about it at length. And if we get to the end of those discussions and think it's going to work, then generally they will, because we've already ironed out the problems. But you might find, some of these ideas and these episodes have come from ideas from League of Gentlemen days that we didn't do or couldn't make work or weren't quite right. And then we've turned them into episodes of Inside Number 9. So yeah, just keep all your notes is what I would say.
What is the story that you think's had the longest gestation in terms of something that's actually made it to the screen? Is when we think, oh my God, that was something that we were talking about when we were students, or something where you've just kept scribbling away and then there is that point of completion?
Probably Tom and Jerry, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because that was a play. When did we write that? It was 1995, something like that. 96. Maybe it was before Edinburgh, wasn't it? Probably. We had it written as an actual play to perform on stage. It was called The Dull Boy, and it was about this embodiment of being unemployed and the descent into the drudgery of not being able to get yourself out of this terrible cycle. And he inveigles his way into this man's life, and they switch roles. Basically, he just pulls him down into this pit. And it had an early incarnation of Pauline when he goes on his restart course. So there's a lot in that play. And then we went back to it to think it could be, if we could truncate it, and the essence of the story we thought was good and could be told. It became a bit different because it wasn't anything with the girlfriend or was added in, and the whole idea that she was not there and he was imaginary. But it was, and there was other characters in there that were similar. There was even a sort of early her lip, wasn't there? With the whole thing with the boiling the sprouts and the boiling water in the face. That was in there, and I think that was
right. Yes.
Remember that, and that was ended up being a hair lip sketch. So there was lots of bits in that. That was a proper magpie nest of lots of ideas that became other things.
Those are some of my favourite. The fragile sanity and what reality, like Diddle Diddle Dumpling as well. I think I better now start asking some of that we have such a large number of questions. The first one is from Lauren, who is a crisis line worker in the United States, and she was very impressed by the nuanced moments in the Cold Comfort episode, and she wondered how much research you do into a scenario such as that into each episode.
Well, that sort of ties in a little bit to your previous question, because I was going to say I'd read an article about the Samaritans and just talking about what it was like to be, on the other end of those support lines, and the different challenges that they threw up. So we took the initial idea from this newspaper article, and I'd had that newspaper article and kept it in a folder for at least 15 or 20 years. It's yellowing now, but there was a lot of great insights. And then once we decided to take it up as an idea. We, now when we started doing League of Gentlemen and everything, Google and internet access and being able to find out about any subject instantly didn't exist. That's why I was carrying newspaper articles around in folders. But we Googled it, and from that we found out a lot about the people who use these Samaritans like lines as sex lines and just want to masturbate. I'm laughing, I shouldn't laugh. But so all of that stuff, people might think we made that up. We didn't. We took all of that from the real testimonies of people who work there. So yeah, we do our research. We do a lot of, even like Sardines, when we decided to add an abuse storyline, we didn't just throw it in. We read up about it and how it affects people. And so any subject now, because it's so easy to do, there's no excuse for not doing your research, because it's just a night in front of your computer.
And the next question is from Ellie, who would like to know, does a joke or concept need to make both of you laugh to make the cut? Or sometimes can one of you persuade the other and go, oh, all right then, we can give it a go?
Yes, I think it's probably always in if we both roll around laughing or make each other laugh. They're always striving to have something, and then it's just in then, you very happily find a moment that we both think is funny. That's a definite. And then I think we have different tastes in what we think are funny, but we'll always I don't think we've ever gone, no, you can't have that in. It's just, I'm telling you now, it's not allowed. So but it irons itself out without massive argument. But I think generally it'll find its way in it'll go if it's not serving the story anyway, because I think we're quite lean in what we end up leaving, with time-wise. You don't want to have overlong scripts, because we haven't got time to be filming stuff that will end up being cut.
Is there one particular episode or any in the first three series where it was one that was most interrupted by the writing process, by you laughing? Which one did you feel, the two of you, was the funniest script in terms of creating it? Because obviously that can be very different. You can just...
Yeah. I don't know. There's not much laughter goes on.
I think we really loved writing The Devil of Christmas, and just getting that bad dialogue, not joke bad, but bad enough that it's funny, and the detail of that. And it's partly the research you do, and then the enjoyment of watching all this stuff and laughing at it together. But I think we really loved writing and filming that episode. It was a real labour of love.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be an enjoyable thing to be able to film that, the booms slightly coming in and get that right, because it was like a very specific level of badness that we wanted to get, that we knew would be fun to do. We always like doing the ones that are a bit actory, the ones that sort of go behind the curtain of TV or actors, and that's we try not to do it too often, but we love all that, and we find it very funny to write as well.
Well, the Actorly thing, I was thinking, so I love the moment where Rula Lenska, we just see that she cannot walk any further up the stairs because it's not being made. Those pieces, but I was thinking in the Seance episode, the reference to shoestring, the toughness of appearing in. Now, this is something that I love when I read scripts, is just thinking, because I remember on the Infinite Monkey Cage once where we were arguing about which television rental shop would have the best rhythm for an introduction involving Brian Cox, and it turned out, and it is Rumbelows. Rumbelows worked in that story. So that, to me, that bit where you're trying to think, especially those Actorly references, when you have people, how long do those take? And is there a point where you go, this is the perfect series for this reference point?
Yeah, well, that's the enjoyable thing about the specificity of your references, isn't it? And sometimes you willfully know, no, only a handful of people will get this, but we sort of demand that we stick with it, because those that do will really enjoy it. We had a thing the other day, didn't we, Steve, where we had to change, we were considering a name that we had to change, and we've still got to actually think of that name. But this very thing that we're talking about is in the script that we've been rehearsing, and it's like there's a specificness to a moment. And you know when you've hit upon it, you end up with like 2 or 3, and you think, yeah, that's the one. But yeah, it was certainly, shoestring is very particular memory for some people, but not others,
Next, Leona would like to know. Actually, we've had this from quite a few. I'll come to Leona's question because there's one that's come up now 5 times, which is, how many times have you found yourself perhaps skating too far in terms of over the lines of taste? And so, is at what point does your kind of moral, ethical guideline go, oh man, that's too much?
Never.
I don't know. We try not to do things lightly. I mean, I suppose when we were doing To Have and To Hold, which was initially going to be a thing about a marriage and looking at these wedding vows and seeing how, you know, it was, and then into that we threw the bomb of he's
the Fritzl.
Yeah, Fritzl. He's but you know, these stories are real. They do happen, and we wanted to make sure that when the cleaner character came out, that she had dignity, that she had chosen to stay there, and that she was, you know, she won in the end, and she was powerful. So we don't, you know, I'd like to think that we don't really. I mean, if something was so tasteless, we wouldn't be allowed to do it anyway. Not anymore. There's so many guidelines now. But we're quite careful. We're not as sort of out to shock as people think.
I love the. I actually got it here. This Reece. I don't know if you remember when you wrote a story, which was the first
Yes.
story in this collection, and it does involve some dog death. And it has my favourite Amazon review of anything I've been involved with, because it's someone. It was a 3-star review, and it just said, "Well, if you find dog death funny, then you'll enjoy this book. I don't, and I didn't." And I thought, wow, they only read one story because it's the first story, and they still gave us 3 stars.
Yeah.
How many would we have had they hated all? But that story is a very. I mean, the punchline of the story you wrote for that book is. And I was thinking about, you know, the problems very often with in the UK are involving animals. So when, for instance, there is that beautiful scene in Quiet Night In of the dog being not thrown through an open window, where it just was there a point where you go, that'll probably get some letters. There will be.
You do get that, don't you? Yes. I mean, through the league, all the horrors that we did in those episodes, only ever really the complaints were Chinnery and the animals.
Can I just say something about this? I'm going to try and find the bit. In the actual script, if people read it, and I think I was quite insistent about this, you see the dog escape from the thing where it's been placed into the umbrella stand, and it says in the script, thus, you know, staving off complaints that we were cruel to a dog. So you see the dog run away. In the end, when Reece got the brolly and was like jamming it down into the thing, we thought, is it really believable now that the dog's going to escape? But it is in the script that we did intend. We did try to get ourselves off the hook.
Yeah, that was just an accident, because the idea was to stuff it down into the bottom of the umbrella stand, but I only had the umbrella to do it, so it ended up looking like I was stabbing it.
It wasn't an accident. You stabbed that dog.
Didn't.
People,
I like dogs.
Please watch that episode again. Go to that bit. Read what I put in the book about saving the dog, and watch the ferocity with which he stabs that dog. It wasn't an accident.
It doesn't look like there's a Lazarus moment potential there, I don't think. Leona, I should ask her a question. She would like to know, which episode have you had the greatest struggle with? Is there any in particular that's had, say, taken longer than another?
Writing-wise and just getting it together.
Yeah, the process of writing.
Yeah, I think didn't Diddle Diddle Dumpling take quite a long time to slowly work our way through it? I mean, I'm going right back to when we were first thinking of it, or did we know where we were going with it? I felt like that we had a few goes at it.
Which, because that one, I mean, people might know, but we literally saw a shoe in the street and came back to the office and immediately started writing about it. So we hadn't necessarily talked through, other than him being obsessed with the shoe, which we thought was a funny idea, we hadn't really talked through where it was going to go, had we? So probably we hit a brick wall with it, where we were halfway in and we'd written funny scenes, but what is it about? And
where's it going?
We had no idea that it was part of the twins. And out of all the scripts in the script book, that one has got the most deleted stuff in there, because there was a whole different ending which we did film, but we had to cut it out for time. So that one probably took maybe the longest to sort out. Yeah.
Is that an episode that surprised you in particular? Because I know I've talked with you about this before, which is there are many people, including myself, who made a presumption at the end, which is not, as far as I know, was your intention of what we're meant to believe has happened at the end.
Yes, I think people jumped to decided that there was the possibility that he'd killed the daughter to join the other dead child, which is very dark and not what we thought at all. We thought there were enough clues in there and enough of discussion between him and the wife that he'd gone to Norfolk and beaten up Matt Bainton. So and you can extrapolate and decide it's that other explanation. It actually works, and it's a good ending. It's not, but it genuinely wasn't what we thought. But that's an example of how you can watch these stories and find hidden meaning in all of it. I remember an interview with Peter Greenaway talking about Draftsman's Contract, and people were discussing why this little dog appears and why is it always between the sheets of on the green, and he said there's no reason for that at all. It's just there on the day I put it in. And people had these big essays about why it was there and the allegorical meaning, and it was the same as in old paintings and things. So you can write them, and it has a life of its own. It's good that it's as detailed, that it's detailed enough to sort of hold that and actually allow people to delve in and create their own theories. But yeah, that instance, it wasn't as horrific as people decided.
Question from Louisa, which is advice that you would give to people who... Oh, sorry, not Louisa, actually it's from Kate, who would like to know advice for writers getting started. Obviously, one of the things to do is buy as many script books as possible by people you admire. But what do you think is the requirement when you want to be a writer? How do you start that process?
Oh, blimey. I mean... Well, writing, our costume designer has a saying, Yves Barr, and he says, ideas are cheap. Writing is something that anyone can do. Of course, it's hard when you've got a job you're doing at the same time. I was really delighted to hear, this guy who won the Booker Prize, he's had this book for 10 or 20 years. I mean, talk about perseverance. Shuggie Bain has just won the Booker Prize. So, if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to get better, write more. Keep writing. Don't just write one thing and think, right, I've got to sell this. This is it. It all hinges on this. Write something else and keep going. Because I think the only way to get better at it, like a lot of things, is to keep doing it. In terms of script books, just buy things you love. You don't have to study them. I mean, Reece and I have never studied script writing. We've never read books about script writing. We go on our instincts, and I think your instincts get sharpened over time the more you write and the more you watch as well, or the more you read. So just you've got to have perseverance and resilience, but there's nothing stopping you, and the hardest thing is to begin. It's like I'm trying to get my daughter to write a personal statement at the moment for UCAS. Unless you start it, you can't rewrite it. You can't rewrite a blank sheet of paper, You've got to have something on the page. You're not going to pour out the best version of it in the first draft. So understand that by reshaping it, reworking it, taking perhaps two of the ideas from it and working on them, you'll get something really valuable in your second draft and third draft. So don't feel it has to be perfect first time round.
I think that's I remember someone giving me that advice, just saying, start writing immediately, because then you'll look back and you'll go, oh my God, that's so awful. That can't be the way I finish the day. Especially like with gag writing. If you put the first gag that's come into your head and you go, imagine if I walked to the producer and showed them that joke, I've really got to come up with something better. So that, as you said, that bit of you're not going to start with perfection. In fact, starting with something that really stinks can be a wonderful motivator. Tracy would like to know, are there characters that you've created for Inside Number 9 that you've had a kind of inkling that you'd like them to return in other episodes?
Oh, well, that would be breaking the the rules, but there's certainly scenarios and characters that we've done where I think, wow, that we're burning through so many ideas. It'd be it's a shame that that's the end of that, and we won't go back to them. So that's happening all the time. I would always have. I mean, we did go back to the Psychoville characters. That was a nice surprise for everyone. But we thought there was more stuff to do with Maureen and David. There he is. What's he doing? I hope you paid for that. That's one of mine.
Should have been about me.
I know.
No, we do talk about.
I got Psychoville cards here. Look at this. This was when it came out on DVD. Never used.
DVD. Remember
Big
those?
pile of them. Anyway, carry on, Steve.
Yeah, no, I was going to say we do talk about this quite a lot, but you know, the ideas are cheap, as I've just said, and limitless, and we don't want to be accused of, oh, they've run out of ideas now, they're just going back to that. So yeah, we just keep trying to come up with new things. I mean, we've just started filming on series 6 and series 7, so we've got 12 episodes more, and I don't know where they came from. Sometimes, you know, we wrote 6 of them in the lockdown like this on Zoom, and 6 others that we did in our office. And you just when you think there's nothing else left in your brain and you are mentally exhausted and ideas poor, you just meet up, you start talking, you have conversations, and you'll find something to just give you that kickstart.
I'm a bit annoyed because I bought both Psychoville DVDs and I never got any postcards. Maybe it was a packing error, it sounds to me.
Must have been. I'll send you one.
We've got a question here from a Jeremy Dyson. And Jeremy Dyson wanted to ask about that collection of lost passport photos from when you lived together in Highgate.
Well, that was the most extraordinary thing, because how did it even begin?
It was the old lady. We lived actually quite near to. My theory is, because we lived near to Highgate Tube Station, that people go to the tube stations to get the passport photos done, and they maybe just get the one they want and they just chuck the others. I don't know, but
we found so many passport photographs over the years that we lived in the flat in Highgate, and we had a cork board in the kitchen, and just over the 4 years we were together in that flat, it filled with extraordinary little passport photographs, like missing people. And it was just brilliant to just come in and just have another look at another one being found. And it would just be a mission that any that we find would bring us
stories, didn't we?
Yeah, we came up with scenarios as to who they were and what had happened to them.
Do you remember Amy?
I was just going to think. Some of them had their names on the back. Yes, so we were. It's funny that you brought that up because I've not thought about it for years.
I'm going to, by the way, apologise for the fact that we have so many more questions and we are running out of time. We've got well over 100 questions, so we're not going to be able to do them all.
Wow.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sending them in. I should do some that were sent in advance as well. This is Daniel wanted to know, by the way, pretty much everyone says, just so you two know, everyone has pretty much prefaced their question by saying how much they absolutely adore the series and how much it means to them. So you should know that. And Daniel is just fascinated in knowing, he said, I've read, Reece, that you find the writing aspect, you've said it's not your favourite part of the process. Has that relationship changed when you look at it in book form, when you actually see it as a collection of 18 episodes?
Oh, yeah. You can't get away now from the personal achievement of sticking with it and doing it. And the writing, it is hard, because it's getting harder because we're doing all these stories. But yeah, it's a brilliant thing now to think we've done 5 series of it, 7 actually, if you think about the ones we've actually written as well. So, but it's only hard in that we've got a heart. That bar is very high with what we've done in the past, that we think. So you just trying to maintain that quality and think, oh God, people are going to be thinking this, we've run out of ideas, or is it the same thing again and it wrapped up in a different way? But yeah, I'm so thrilled now that they're coming out at all. For a long time we wanted the scripts to come out and there was no one it wasn't anything that anyone said was of interest. They were like, no one will buy them. They're not bought anymore. People don't. No one goes for them. And then suddenly Hodder came to the rescue and was like, we'd love to do them. And we were so delighted that they were going to be preserved. It's fantastic.
Do you think people are still surprised? Because in one way, it's a niche show, except it's not, because it's watched by a very large number of people who feel very, as I was just saying, all these people, they feel an intense love and an intense attachment. And to me, there's something very beautiful about that, which is, in one way, I think that somewhere in the mainstream, people almost would still consider, oh, this is slightly kind of out there and cultish. And yet, both the viewing figures and the intensity of love for it make it more mainstream than many things that would be considered to be mainstream.
Yeah, and I think people love it, don't they? Yeah, and those that love it really, really like it. And we're at the sort of pinnacle. I'm glad it's not a sort of MEEH meh program. You know, it's great that it's really liked or really hated if you look at certain places.
You've got to stop looking in those places, because there's love everywhere for it. There really is. So Lauren would like to know, which character in the first 3 seasons do you think Reece is most like Steve? And then we will swap that question round. So,
ooh,
be careful.
Yeah.
That's hard. Well, don't be mad. Probably. Don't look at his face. Seance time.
Terry?
Yeah.
He's horrid. Okay. And for you, Jorg. In Couchette.
Yeah. I'll take that.
So back to the shoebox again.
Back in the shoebox.
I've got a question from Mark Gatiss as well.
Oh.
And he wondered, would the two of you ever consider doing a comedy?
Yeah, we'd consider it.
One time. If we have a good idea.
We've had a lot of people ask this as well, which is, without budgetary restrictions, so if we remove those, is there a particular scenario, a particular world that you think there's no point in us doing that because we won't be able to build it? Which world, and I'll ask both you separately on this, where would you, in the perfect vast budget world, like to place an episode of Inside Number 9? Steve?
Well, we have done actually 2 or 3, which we thought were possible, but haven't managed to be possible. So, but where would I like to? I mean, we had some really good ideas for setting a story in an audience of a theatre. So you never see what's going on. You're only looking at the audience, and just to have that many people every day filling that theatre. I mean, we could probably get the theatres at the moment, sadly, but filling them with people is expensive. So, I think that would be quite intriguing, because we like to try telling non-verbal stories. So what story can you tell about the relationships of the people in this audience without necessarily using a lot of dialogue, just their reactions to the play? So that's a dream. We may see it yet one day.
Yeah, we wrote it, didn't we? I mean, it probably would be possible. It'd be good to do one on a plane, maybe. That would be a nice new scenario. Or maybe Number 9 terminal. So you'd have to have a big airport thing, which might be good. You probably get that now as well. But that's not really sort of like a build, like a building a mine, which would be maybe another good one. But they're all quite constrained. So really, the possibility is that they should all be doable, because you're not doing a massive set. But there would be 2 new interesting ones. I mean, the place is really often not the thing. It's the story and you can house it anywhere really, as long as you've got a good story. It's not like you just go, oh, I'll tell you what you should do, number 9 bus. I mean, how many times have we heard that? You want to hear what fucking happens? So that's the thing.
Do you think we'll ever do number 9 bus?
We won't do number 9 bus, no.
Will there be a shot with a number 9 bus, which will merely be to establish something else, though? Just
and it
so
goes
then
by,
you can get that off, and then you can just forget about that. You know, the way that in Dynasty, to show that it was London, they would show a shot of double-decker bus, and you go, well, it must be London. It's the only place they've got them, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And the final, again, we've had this from a lot of people, which is, what do you now currently find the scariest thing in terms of on television, radio, films? What in recent times has been the thing that you found, other people's work that you found most unsettling? Steve, starting with you.
Well, other than Rudy Giuliani seemingly sweating blood.
I did a picture of yesterday, Steve, with him and Dirk Bogarde in Death in Venice. Literally melting from under his hat.
It's so hard now to. I mean, I would probably look less at other horror films than I would at sort of dramas. So I loved like The Leftovers, for example, which is very biblical, very, very, deep. And so it's conventional horror films. They kind of tend to follow a certain path. And I think you've got to be surprised. So when Jeremy and I went to see Blair Witch Project, this is going back years, when we were filming League of Gentlemen. Now, at the time, that was genuinely innovative. And even though it took a long time to set the atmosphere up, those last few minutes, we were clinging on to each other in the cinema, and we're horror fans, so you look for stuff like that that's going to really get under your skin. And as always with these questions, I can never think of recent examples, but I'll have a think when Reece answers.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to, because I'm not a massive zombie film fan. I mean, I like them, but it's a familiar thing now to see. It's been done to death a little bit, but I loved the Train to Busan, and that's got a sequel, hasn't it, coming out? And I've seen the trailer. That looks really scary again. I found that really frightening. It's sort of the scale of it and the enormity and the savagery of those zombies in that. So I'm excited about that.
It looked a bit like Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome to me.
Oh, I like the look of it. It did. There was like that one it was like about 500 of them all joined together, like some seething blob.
Yes, like the Human Centipede.
Yes.
There was a French series on Netflix called Veronica? Have you seen that one, Robin?
No.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. That's pretty good. I'd recommend that. I think it's called Veronica. Some girl's name, anyway. Just work your way through all the girls' names on Netflix.
Well, that's what they do. They've got an algorithm. You put in any girl's name, it'll come up you must be someone who likes films with girls' names in them. Here we go. It's a very, very handy thing. Thank you so much, both of you. And in fact, I think you've got it there with you because there are 2 different versions of the book, obviously. I showed earlier the paperback version of the book. Yeah. You have the, just for those of you who haven't got it yet,
bespoke.
The folios there.
Yeah. Beautiful.
There are another 2 books in the box, by the way, in case you think this is... Now, very beautiful.
Nice, pretty. I've done an unboxing video on YouTube. That's if people think, "What on earth are you doing?"
As David Salberts.
Keep the plastic youthful.
David, you can't even read. What are you doing with it?
Do people know why this is so clever? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, everyone who joined in on this. Again, I apologise for the fact there have been so many questions and so many magnificent questions from people. Am I able to? Do we know yet, by the way, when because obviously now you're filming 2 series? Is there any rough sense of when the next series is going to be out, or does that all hang in the air?
There really isn't, because we don't have power over it. We'll film them and then they'll, it'd be great to have 2 series done, but we don't know when they'll then put them on. Probably as quick as they can, because they've ran out of things, haven't they? They're currently repeating 2019 or something, repeating them old football matches and things. So hopefully it'll be on as quick as we can make them, which could be the earliest, could be the summer. but probably not. Could be a year.
Well, for those of you who want to see the evolution of these things, then I think it's Sky Arts show Tales of the Unexpected between 1 and 2. And if you really want to see how storytelling has changed in 30 years, then watch one of those episodes. They are Inside Number 9. Thank you very much to everyone at Waterstones as well who've put this on. Thanks everyone for watching. Thank you so much, Reece and Steve. I, as usual, am chomping at the bit to see the next series, and I will now return. I'm now allowed to watch series 4, aren't I? Because I've only been doing series 1 to 3 for legal reasons.
Yeah,
but now we've done this, so
get on those next.
Come watch series 4. Thanks very much, everyone.
Robin,
all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank everyone.
Fantastic interview. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Do you know how you want to play it? I'll play that as well as we go.